Okay, well, we are back from our break with Dr. Rob, and I'd like to ask Dr. Rob, is Macho Man Randy Savage with us right now?
He is. I can see him in all gold robes with sparkles on him. He's definitely the showman with his big glasses, and he's looking young like he did when I saw him back in the 80s, and he's very full of energy and very impressive as a spirit on the other side.
So he's wearing gold. Any red? Because I remember him wearing red.
I do see the red sunglasses, but I do see him in gold. I think this is just his showmanship showing through. I remember as a kid, he was always big on the show, and everything was about the show, and he was always the kind of the Muhammad Ali as far as talking crap to his opponents prior to wrestling with them, and so I kind of see him in that same kind of get up. It seems like he just has that golden robes. I think are just more of a symbol than really what he would be wearing if he was still alive today.
So is he excited to be on our show?
He's been actually speaking to me all afternoon since we started coming up with the show today, and he's very excited to be here. That's for sure.
Oh, that's really great. And I'd like to ask him, Randy, what exactly caused the accident that you were involved in that ended your life?
Well, he says that he had some palpitations, some fast heartbeat for about 5 days prior to his passing, and he kind of pushed it off. He had been working out and trying to get back into shape, and he just assumed that he was out of shape, and he really wasn't recognizing them as little mini heart attacks. And from what I understand from him, he did pass from a heart attack, but I really believe that from what I can feel, that it was actually a stroke that he had that caused the heart attack. And, unfortunately, I think he was already, from what I can see from the other side, he was already on the other side before the car actually crashed. Okay. Wow. And I'd like to ask him, Randy, did you accomplish everything that you set out to accomplish in this lifetime? He says that, for himself personally, even though he died in such a shocking way, he was really happy to be on the other side. He said, pretty much he had finished everything. I mean, he was in love with his wife, and, starting a family with her was really exciting for him. But he really felt like as far as his career was concerned and in all the things that he was involved with, he pretty much had finished up everything. He felt like, God called him home at just the right timing. He said he'd had a lot of health issues in the last couple of years, a lot of pain, constant pain from, being a wrestler for so many years, and it was just really sometimes unbearable where he could barely walk. And so, for him, he never wanted to lose his agility and his ability, and so for him that was kind of a blessing in disguise. Okay, so what he's saying is his body just gave out. Pretty much. He said he used a lot of enhancers during his career to build up his muscle strength, and it really affected him at the end of his life. And so it's something that he's not necessarily proud of, but he said it was necessary at the time, and it wasn't really known all the negativity that we know today about using those kind of things in our bodies and what they can do to us in the long term. And for him, he was really just about the show and about making the best of his performances, and he felt like he needed that enhancement to kind of be the showman everyone expected him to be. Okay, and when he says enhancements, what exactly, supplements or doctor-prescribed medication? He said that he was using all kinds of things at that time, prescribed and unprescribed. I think that's what I'll just say about it. I really feel like, with what he's trying to give me here is trying to kind of admit to some of these uses of things that were not necessarily thought of as legal at the time. And so even today, they're not considered legal. And I think that for him personally, that's kind of a way to kind of make peace with his past. I see. Okay, I'd like to ask, what was it like working in the early days of wrestling, Randy? He said it was so much fun. He said that was it was a blast. He said everybody knew each other, everybody, was coordinating things together, and it was kind of, for him, it was all about being like, almost like he says, being in a Broadway play. Every week was a different act to that play, and he said that they would actually write out, scripts of who was going to do what with who, and kind of give, an idea of what was going to come next. And it was almost like, a novel, being written on a week by week basis with kind of like an outline of, this is what's going to happen this month and this season. And they kind of gave all the wrestlers an idea of who was going to be what and when. And, he said that not all the matches were, set up that way, but, there were sometimes that things happened that were not scripted. Occasionally he said he would just mess with them and just really mess up their plans and do his own thing, and he was very unpopular with some of the promoters due to his inability to follow directions.
So they didn't like it, but maybe part of it they did like, but they really want him to follow program, right?
Yeah, I mean, he won a couple of matches he wasn't supposed to win, is what he said. Yeah, he kind of set it up that way. He's like, screw that. I'm not gonna lose to that guy. And he says that that for him was kind of exciting because he was such a popular star. That what were they going to do? Fire him? That's kind of how he felt about it. And so, he says that's one of the reasons why he didn't stay, with the WWF was because Vince McMahon and him just did not get along. Vince was very controlling and just really wanted to control everyone in every aspect of their life. And he said he wasn't in the Army and he wasn't going to take orders from anybody.
That's funny. That's really funny. And I remember, Randy, your father was a pro wrestler. Are you with your father right now?
He says that he was very happy to see his dad again. They were, not so close in the early part of his life. There was a lot of, abuse there. But he said that, at the end of his life, he definitely missed his father and was looking forward to seeing him. And they are together. His dad was never, says the kind of wrestler that he was. His dad was a hardcore wrestler. He was more of a showman. He was more. That's what his dad always said. He was in show business. He wasn't in wrestling. And Randy says to me that for himself personally, that was a satisfaction for him to drive the sports cars and have the nice houses and everything, and kind of throw it up in his dad's face and show him, hey, look, you may have put me into this, but I made it myself. And I don't know if you know this, but he says his brother was also a wrestler. One of the top wrestlers at the time too, and they had gone head to head against each other. And he says that with the family being in wrestling, it kind of was just a family business.
Well, I didn't know that about the brother. So I'd like to ask Randy what his childhood was like growing up and living in an all wrestling family.
He said it was always difficult for him because his father was always pushing them, especially with athletics and working out and staying fit. And he said that sometimes they would go on these weird diets where they wouldn't eat for a week or 2 weeks at a time, and they would just bulk up in other ways. And he said that it was really difficult for him growing up in that environment because he never really accepted himself for himself. There's always that need to perform, and it's a lot of part of his life. He said that was kind of disappointing to him that people didn't want to hear from him anymore.
So I guess he felt even as a child that he was under some pressure, some stress. His dad really wanted him to do well, so he pushed him as hard as he could.
He said it was almost like training for the Olympics. He said that his father was up, with him at 4:30 in the morning, making him run 5 miles, and then, there was their exercise routine. He said that they exercised and worked out 7 days a week. He said his father wanted them to be professionals, and he really pushed them really hard to make that happen. But Randy says that he never would have gone into wrestling had it not been for his father. He said he wanted to be a fireman.
Wow, a fireman. And I'd like to ask him, did you really have a feud with Roddy Piper back in the day?
He said he hated him. He absolutely hated him. He said he was nothing but a jerk to him.
So that was definitely not a joke or anything planned by the network or the Wrestling Federation.
No, he said this is real. He said he would have kicked his ass if he'd have seen him in the alleyway. Seriously, I'm laughing about it because he has that, he has that really deep laugh, and he's very infectious. Exactly, and he's very infectious in the way that he's communicating with me, and very vibrant. When he said he would kick his ass, I believed him. I really did. He said that Roddy was always a scumbag as far as he was concerned, and he was always hitting on his girls. So, for himself personally, that was kind of interesting that they would use that, that feud amongst them to kind of promote the wrestling world, because it was kind of legitimate.
Wow. And what about Hulk Hogan? How did you enjoy working with Hulk Hogan?
He says that he calls him Terry. He says that Terry was a great guy, and that the feuds that they had over the years were fake. He said that for himself personally, that even it was a very close relationship, mutual respect, over the years, and for him, he was somebody he knew he could count on. He said in the latter part of their lives together, they really didn't have much contact. Hulk became a super movie star, and he kind of just forgot about all the people in his life. And so for himself personally, that was kind of sad for him to kind of lose contact with him.
Oh, I see. And does he have any stories from working with Hulk Hogan you'd like to share with us?
He said that, with Hulk was, Terry says that, he was kind of followed direction really well. He said that, for himself personally, it was always a joy to work with them. They always had a lot of time to plan things out, and he said that Terry was very meticulous with everything he did, and everything was almost like dancing with him. He said it was so choreographed. And he said that for himself personally, it was an enjoyable experience working with him. He said that, they always played tricks on each other, and that was one of the things he enjoyed about working with Terry. That's so cool. And, Randy, what do you see in the future for Terry? He says that, for him, he's going to stay, a star, but he really doesn't see him doing anything, as far as going back to wrestling. He says that for him, he's going to stick with his movies and his reality shows. He says that there's going to be a new reality show with Hulk Hogan coming up in the next 2 years. So it will be interesting to see where that's going. That'll be really interesting. Randy, what do you think of modern wrestling today? He's laughing. He's laughing hysterically. And for him, I think that's a sign that, he has a lot more to say about it, obviously. But I guess, does he believe it's real? He says definitely not. He's laughing at me. He's like, he said, that's not even close to being real. He said they're even more choreographed than what they used to be, and even more scripted. He said the new guys are pretty dumb, and they have a hard time following along with the storyline, so they have people in the back telling them exactly what to do when to do it. He said there's been occasions where, some of the guys had actual earpieces in so that they could get direction, from the stagehands. Wow, that sounds really scripted and planned. How about Miss Elizabeth? Did you have a real relationship with Miss Elizabeth? He says that, no. He said that was definitely just all part of the show. They were really good friends. Felt like it would give both of them good publicity and kind of give him the opportunity to, further his career. And it was kind of just one of those stage marriages where it wasn't really a real relationship. They loved each other, but not in that way. I see. And they did actually get married? He says no, it wasn't a real marriage. And they read the marriage certificate out, but they didn't actually get married by real pastors. The person who married him wasn't ordained, and so they didn't actually get married for real. It was more of along the lines of just for the show. And what is the one thing that you regret about your career, that if you could change it? He said that for him, it was too soon, ended too soon. He said he wished he could have wrestled until the day he died, but he was happy to have, the recognition for his contribution, and also, those Slim Jim commercials that we're so used to seeing him in gave him a lot of joy. For himself personally, he says he never liked the meat. He's laughing about it. He said he thought it was disgusting and gross. Something that, he can't believe that he'd actually put it in his mouth, but, he's laughing all the way to the bank, he said, I remember imitating the Slim Jim commercials, running around, saying his quoted phrase. And some people say that they didn't like the meat very much either. I do remember that. I like it all right. I mean, it's not something I go out and buy every day, but it definitely, has a unique flavor. And, who's to say who's going to be the next sponsor for the Dr. Rob Show featuring Billy O'Brien. And so I guess we should, move on to the next subject. With Randy, I'm going to go ahead and let him go back to the other side. Did you have one last question for him? I do. What one piece of advice would you give anyone who's wanting to get into wrestling, pro wrestling? He says you definitely need dance classes.
he said that's one of the big things that he wishes he would have had was the ability to be more agile. He said if he would have been more agile while he was wrestling, he wouldn't be in so much pain at the end of his life. And he said that that's one of the regrets that he had, was he wasn't aware of, exactly what all the wear and tear was going to be on his body. And if he had to do it over again, that would be the one thing he said that he would, definitely take better care of himself.
Take steps to protect himself better, train differently, basically take care of his body.
Yeah, he said in the early days no one really cared about him or what was happening with him. They just cared about making the money. And so, there's many times that he had pulled something or injured himself in some way, and he would still be working. And for him, that was difficult to see himself through to the end.